"Don't untie my dress," she cried. But the Apache didn't and helped her heal the scars. Leah had always loved the festival season. Every year, the small town came alive with music, lights, and laughter that spilled into the night. Stalls lined the streets filled with colorful crafts, sweet treats, and toys that sparkled in the glow of lanterns. Families wandered from booth to booth. Friends shared jokes and stories, and the air smelled of warm bread and flowers. To Leah, it was a time when the world felt safe and joyful, a break from the worries that often weighed her down. That evening, Leah had dressed carefully. She had chosen a soft blue dress, the one that made her feel confident and bright. Her hair was braided neatly, and she carried a small purse with her essentials. She looked forward to meeting her friends near the carousel, a place where she could laugh and forget about the pressures of everyday life. But as she approached the crowd, a strange feeling settled in her chest. Something felt different this year, though she couldn't immediately say what. The streets were fuller than she expected. The music from the carousel and the performers blended into a cheerful hum that filled the air, but the crowd's energy felt heavier, almost restless. People moved quickly from one stall to another, jostling past each other in a rush. Leah tried to ignore the unease, reminding herself that she had always been careful. She had walked these streets many times before, and nothing had ever gone wrong. Leah's attention was drawn to a corner of the festival where a small group had gathered. She could see children laughing as they chased each other, parents talking nearby, and street performers making the crowd cheer. For a moment it felt normal and safe, and Leah let out a quiet sigh of relief. But then she noticed something that made her heart skip. A few people in the crowd were moving differently. Slowly, deliberately, almost as if they were watching. Their eyes seemed to linger on her longer than usual. Instinctively, Leah's hand went to her purse. She didn't want to admit it, but she felt a flicker of fear. She remembered the stories she had heard growing up, stories of people who had acted carelessly and found themselves in difficult situations. Most of them were just warnings, things adults said to keep children cautious. But now, in the middle of the festival, the warnings felt real. Her mind raced as she tried to plan how to navigate through the crowd. Leah took a deep breath and reminded herself that panic wouldn't help. She kept walking, weaving through the people with careful steps. She glanced around for her friends, hoping they were nearby, but the crowd seemed to stretch endlessly. Every step she took, her heart beat a little faster, and the sense of unease grew. She felt small and exposed among the throngs of festival-goers. It was then that she noticed him. A man, standing slightly apart from the crowd, watching without seeming threatening. His presence was calm, unlike the restless energy of the others. He had dark eyes that seemed to understand more than he let on, and his posture was relaxed yet alert. There was something about him that made Leah pause. He wasn't smiling, but he didn't seem unfriendly either. He just watched, quietly, as if he were waiting for something. For reasons she couldn't explain, Leah felt a strange sense of reassurance from him. In the middle of her growing unease, his calm presence reminded her that not everyone in the crowd meant harm. She forced herself to keep moving, focusing on reaching the carousel. But every now and then, her eyes flicked back to him, and she noticed that he didn't follow her closely. Instead, he remained at a distance, observing. As Leah navigated through the crowd, she felt a sudden brush of hands near her dress. She froze. The festival sounds, music, laughter, and chatter faded for a moment, replaced by the pounding of her own heartbeat. She spun slightly, trying to see what had happened. Fear surged through her, sharp and immediate. Without thinking, she cried out, "Don't untie my dress!" The words burst from her mouth before her mind could even process them. The moment felt frozen in time, Leah's eyes scanned the area, searching for someone who might help, but the crowd seemed indifferent, caught up in its own energy. She felt alone and vulnerable, even though people surrounded her. And yet, through the panic, she caught sight of him. The man who had been standing apart. His gaze met hers, steady and calm. He didn't approach aggressively or rush in. Instead, he moved in a way that felt deliberate but safe, positioning himself between Leah and the rest of the crowd without touching her or startling her further. Leah's fear began to shift slightly. Though her body was still tense, her mind registered that this man was different. He wasn't part of the chaos. He didn't seem interested in causing harm. Instead, there was something protective in the way he stood, a quiet assurance that someone noticed her distress and would not take advantage of it. Her voice trembled, but she found herself whispering a silent thank you to him. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Leah's legs carried her toward the edge of the festival, where the lights grew dimmer and the crowd thinner. She kept glancing back at him. He followed at a distance, keeping an eye on her without ever crowding her space. It was a strange experience, fear and relief mixed together in a way she hadn't expected. She realized that sometimes safety didn't come from running or hiding. Sometimes it came from someone being there without interfering, someone who understood boundaries and respect. By the time Leah reached the quiet street behind the festival, her heart was still racing, but the immediate panic had eased. The man stopped at the edge of the crowd. He gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging her presence and her courage, and then turned away, blending back into the evening. Leah watched him go, feeling a complex mix of emotions, relief, curiosity, and a budding sense of gratitude. That night, Leah lay in bed replaying every moment. Her hands still trembled slightly, and her mind kept returning to that man, the quiet protector who had shown up when she needed someone the most. She didn't know his name, and she didn't understand why fate had placed him there, but she felt changed. Something had shifted inside her. Fear had been real, but so had the kindness and calm of a stranger who chose not to hurt. As sleep finally took her, Leah made a quiet promise to herself. She would remember that night, not just for the fear, but for the unexpected help she had received. It was a lesson in trust, in observing the world carefully, and in finding courage even when everything around her felt overwhelming. And though she didn't know it yet, that single encounter would mark the beginning of a journey, one that would challenge her, heal her, and teach her more about herself than she had ever imagined. After that night at the festival, Leah's life felt different, though she couldn't fully explain why. The image of the quiet man, his calm eyes, his steady presence, kept appearing in her mind. She didn't know his name or where he had gone, but she remembered the way he had stayed back, never crossing boundaries, and yet protecting her in a subtle, almost invisible way. It was strange to think that a stranger could make such an impact, but somehow he had. In the days that followed, Leah found herself walking a little more cautiously through her town. She noticed details she hadn't paid attention to before. The way people moved on the street, the way neighbors exchanged smiles, the way the wind rustled through the trees. Each step was careful, deliberate, and yet she felt a quiet vigilance growing inside her. It wasn't fear anymore. It was awareness. She realized that she wanted to understand the world better, to see who could be trusted and who could not, without letting fear control her life. Her friends noticed the change in her, too. At first, they asked if she was okay. Leah smiled and said she was, though inside she still felt the echoes of that night. Her mind replayed the incident again and again, not with panic, but with a mix of curiosity and gratitude. She couldn't explain why, but she felt drawn to the idea of learning more about people like the man who had helped her. Who was he? Why had he chosen to act with such care and patience? One afternoon, Leah decided to visit the community center in her town. It was a place she hadn't been to much before, filled with classrooms, small libraries, and open spaces where people of all ages gathered for events, workshops, and clubs. She had heard that the center often hosted cultural programs, storytelling sessions, and volunteer activities. Perhaps, she thought, if she visited, she might see him again. Even the faint hope of it made her heart race. As she entered the center, she noticed a quiet hum of activity. Children laughed in a nearby room, practicing a dance for an upcoming performance. Adults worked on crafts while others read books or helped with small tasks. Leah moved slowly, scanning the area, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man from the festival. Then, in a small corner, she saw him. He was teaching a group of children how to make simple toys from wood, guiding their hands with patience and gentle encouragement. His voice was soft but clear, and his eyes sparkled with a kindness that made Leah's chest tighten. She watched from a distance, not wanting to interrupt, but wanting to understand him better. She realized that the calm and protective presence she had noticed at the festival wasn't just an accident. It was part of who he was. Leah returned to the community center several times in the following weeks. Each time she observed him quietly, learning more about the way he worked with others. He never raised his voice, never demanded attention, and never acted in a way that made anyone feel small or afraid. He was simply there, guiding, teaching, and helping. The more she watched, the more she felt inspired. She realized that true strength didn't come from loud words or forceful actions. It came from patience, understanding, and quiet courage. One day Leah mustered the courage to speak to him. She approached slowly, her hands trembling slightly as she held a small notebook where she wrote her thoughts and reflections. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I've seen you here a few times. I wanted to say thank you for that night at the festival. You helped me feel safe when I was scared." The man looked up at her, his dark eyes kind and steady. "You're welcome," he said simply with a calm smile. "I saw that you were frightened. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." Leah felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over her. She nodded, unsure what else to say. I don't know your name," she admitted. "I'm Tomas," he said. "It's nice to meet you properly, Leah." From that moment, a cautious friendship began. Tomas shared stories of his culture, teaching Leah about the traditions of his people, the Apache. He spoke of respect, patience, and the ways of living in harmony with the world around them. Leah listened with fascination. She realized that his actions at the festival were not just about that single moment. They were a reflection of a deeper understanding of life and human connection. As Leah spent more time with Tomas, she began to share pieces of her own life, her fears, her worries, and the small scars that she carried from past experiences. She spoke slowly at first, unsure if she could trust someone so completely. But Tomas listened without interruption, without judgment. He never pushed her to share more than she was comfortable with. He simply acknowledged her feelings, offering guidance and reassurance in gentle ways. One afternoon, while they sat in the quiet garden behind the community center, Tomas taught Leah a simple breathing exercise. "When your mind races," he said, "take a moment to breathe deeply. Feel the ground beneath you, the air around you. Let the small things remind you that you are safe in this moment." Leah followed his instructions carefully, and for the first time in weeks, She felt a calm she hadn't known she could reach on her own. Their friendship grew naturally, without pressure or expectation. Leah learned that healing didn't happen overnight, but small steps mattered. Tomas encouraged her to try small acts of courage, speaking up in class, volunteering for a project, helping others in need. Each time she succeeded, no matter how small, she felt her confidence grow. And through it all, Tomas remained a steady presence, never demanding, never intrusive, simply supportive. Leah began to realize that the world was not as frightening as she had once believed. There were dangers, yes, but there were also people like Tomas, people whose kindness, patience, and respect created safety in ways that could change lives. She started noticing small acts of kindness in her daily life, from neighbors helping one another to strangers holding doors open, and it reminded her that the world could be a place of care and connection. Months passed and Leah's perspective shifted. She still remembered the fear she had felt at the festival, but that memory no longer held power over her. Instead, it became a story of resilience, courage, and unexpected help. She had discovered that sometimes the most important protection came not from running or hiding, but from learning to trust wisely and from allowing kindness into her life. By the end of that year, Leah had changed in ways she could not have imagined. She smiled more often, laughed more freely, and walked through her town with confidence. She had found a mentor, a friend, and a guide in Thomas, and through their interactions, she learned to recognize her own strength. Most importantly, she understood that healing was a journey that required patience, understanding, and the courage to face both fear and hope. And though she did not know what the future held, Leah felt ready to meet it. The memory of that night at the festival, the fear, the cry of "Don't untie my dress," and the calm presence of a stranger had transformed from a moment of panic into a story of trust, compassion, and the quiet beginnings of a healing journey. She realized that sometimes the people we least expect can help us find our way, and that the world, despite its challenges, also held moments of extraordinary care and connection. Over time, Leah realized that simply feeling safe was not enough. She still carried the invisible weight of her past, the small scars of fear, doubt, and moments when she had felt powerless. They weren't visible to anyone else, but to her, they were real and heavy. Even though her encounters with Tomas had brought calm and guidance, she knew that true healing required her to face those memories and feelings directly. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly. Leah would sit quietly in her room at home, thinking about the festival and the moment when she had cried out, "Don't untie my dress." At first, the memory brought a shiver of fear, but as the days went by, she began to see the event differently. She began to recognize that the fear she had felt was real and valid, but it didn't define her. It was just one moment, one experience, and it could teach her something if she was willing to learn. One afternoon, Leah decided to try something new. She carried a notebook with her, one she had decorated with bright colors and stickers, and began to write down everything she remembered about that night. She wrote about the fear, the crowd, and the hands that had brushed against her dress. She wrote about her heart pounding and the way the man, Thomas, had appeared without causing harm. As the words flowed onto the page, she realized that writing allowed her to look at her experience from a distance. It was no longer just a memory that caused panic, it was a story she could tell and understand. Thomas noticed Leah's new habit when she visited the community center. She had come to one of his cultural storytelling sessions, notebook in hand, and timidly asked if she could share a story she had written. Tomas smiled gently. "Of course," he said. "Stories are one of the most powerful ways to understand ourselves. Take your time and share what you feel ready to share." Leah read aloud, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger with each word. She told the story of the festival, of the fear, and of the quiet stranger who had helped her without asking for anything in return. As she spoke, she realized that the memory didn't hold power over her the way it once had. Speaking the story allowed her to separate the fear from herself. It had happened, yes, but she was no longer trapped by it. Afterward, Thomas approached her with a soft smile. "Leah," he said, "you are learning something important. When we face our fears and speak about them, we take back the power that fear once held over us. You are stronger than you realize." Leah nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest that went beyond simple gratitude. It was a feeling of understanding, of connection, not just to Thomas, but to herself. From that day on, Leah began a series of small challenges she called courage steps. Each day she would do something that tested her in a gentle way. Sometimes it was speaking up in a group discussion. Sometimes it was volunteering to help a younger child at the community center. Sometimes it was simply walking through a crowded area while staying aware of her surroundings. Each step was small, but with each step, she felt a little more in control of her life. Tomas supported her in subtle ways. He never forced her to take bigger steps than she was ready for. Instead, he offered encouragement and guidance. One day, he taught her a simple meditation technique. When you feel overwhelmed, he said, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine yourself surrounded by a circle of light. The light protects you, and it reminds you that you are safe here and now. Leah practiced the exercise every day. At first it felt strange, but gradually she noticed that her anxiety lessened and her confidence grew. Another important part of Leah's healing was listening to the stories Thomas shared about his own life and his culture. He spoke about the Apache tradition of passing down lessons through storytelling, about respect for oneself and for others, and about finding strength in patience and understanding. Leah found comfort in these lessons. They taught her that healing wasn't about erasing fear or pretending nothing had happened. It was about learning to live fully, even with fear as a part of life. One afternoon, Leah sat with Thomas under a large oak tree behind the community center. The sun filtered through the branches, casting soft patterns on the ground. She felt a familiar nervousness as she opened her notebook. This time, she wrote not about fear, but about her small victories. She wrote about the courage steps she had taken, about moments when she had spoken up, helped others, or simply stayed calm when she might have panicked in the past. Thomas watched quietly as she wrote. When she finished, she read aloud, her voice calm and steady. "I am learning to trust myself," she said. "I am learning to understand my feelings. I am learning that I am stronger than my fears." Thomas nodded, pride shining in his eyes. "Yes, Leah, that is exactly what you are doing. Healing is not a race, it is a journey, and you are walking it with patience and courage." Leah began to notice changes in her daily life as well. She felt more confident around friends and family, more willing to take initiative, and more aware of her own thoughts and emotions. She noticed when her mind began to spiral into worry, and she practiced pausing, breathing, and reflecting. Slowly, the invisible scars she had carried for so long began to feel lighter. They didn't disappear, but they no longer controlled her. Through this process, Leah also discovered the importance of sharing her experiences with others. She began talking to her friends about fear, courage, and healing, using simple stories and examples from her own life. She didn't want to scare anyone. She just wanted them to understand that it was okay to feel afraid, and that it was possible to move forward with support and patience. Her friends responded with curiosity and kindness, and some even shared their own small fears and victories. Leah realized that sharing her story created a ripple of understanding, connecting her more deeply to the people around her. Leah's bond with Thomas continued to grow, but it remained rooted in respect and understanding. He never crossed boundaries, and she never felt pressured or uncomfortable. He was a mentor and a friend, and through him, she learned to recognize the value of safe, supportive relationships. She began to understand that true guidance came from patience, empathy, and consistency, not from loud words or forceful actions. As the seasons changed, Leah's confidence blossomed. She felt proud of the progress she had made, but she also knew that healing was ongoing. Some days were harder than others, when memories resurfaced or old anxieties crept back. On those days, she used the techniques Tomas had taught her: writing, breathing exercises, courage steps, and reflection. She learned that setbacks were not failures. They were opportunities to grow stronger and more self-aware. By the end of this part of her journey, Leah had transformed her relationship with fear. The memory of the festival, the panic she had felt, and the cry of "Don't untie my dress" no longer controlled her life. Instead, they became a story she could tell, a reminder of the resilience and courage she had discovered within herself. She had learned to face her fears, take small steps toward confidence, and trust in the quiet guidance of those who cared. Leah understood something profound. Healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning from it, growing through it, and using the lessons to build a stronger, more confident self. And with Tomas by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges and joys the future might bring, knowing that courage and patience would guide her every step of the way. Leah began to notice that the changes in her life were no longer small. What had started as subtle improvements, speaking up in class, helping a younger child at the community center, learning to breathe through her fears, had grown into something deeper. She felt stronger, calmer, and more capable of facing challenges she had once thought impossible. Every day she woke with a sense of purpose, a quiet determination to continue growing and learning. One morning, Leah arrived at the community center early. The sun was just rising, casting a soft golden glow across the garden where she and Thomas often sat. The air smelled of fresh grass and flowers, and the gentle chirping of birds created a peaceful rhythm. She found Tomas arranging materials for the day's activities. Without even thinking, she offered to help him. "Good morning, Leah," Tomas said with a warm smile. "You're early today." "I wanted to help," Leah replied, feeling a sense of pride in her voice. "I feel like I can do more now, and I want to give back." That is a very good mindset. Helping others is one of the best ways to grow and to heal. Sometimes when we focus on others, we discover strength within ourselves we didn't know existed. Leah spent the morning organizing books, setting up chairs, and preparing supplies for the day's workshop. The act of helping was simple, yet it filled her with a sense of accomplishment. She realized that healing wasn't just about addressing her fears. It was also about creating positive experiences, both for herself and for others. Every kind word she offered, every small gesture of support, added to her confidence and reinforced the lessons she had learned with Thomas. Later that day, Thomas introduced a new activity. He called it a story circle. Everyone in the group was encouraged to share a personal story, a challenge they had faced, a moment of courage, or a lesson they had learned. Leah felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. Sharing personal stories had always been difficult for her, especially stories about fear or vulnerability. Yet, she felt ready to try. When it was her turn, Leah took a deep breath and began. "I want to share something that happened to me a long time ago," she said softly. She told the group about the festival, the fear she had felt, and the quiet stranger, Thomas, who had helped her. She spoke about the small steps she had taken since that day, the breathing exercises, the courage steps, and the way she had learned to trust herself. As she spoke, Leah noticed something remarkable. She didn't feel the panic she had once expected. Instead, she felt proud. The story wasn't about fear anymore. It was about resilience, growth, and hope. When she finished, the group applauded, not just out of politeness, but because they recognized the courage it took to share such a personal journey. Leah smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that went beyond simple happiness. She felt connected, understood, and stronger than ever before. Tomas placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Leah," he said, "you are showing others the power of courage and healing. Sharing your story helps not only you, but also everyone who listens. You are turning your experiences into a gift for others." Leah realized that Tomas was right. She had spent so much time focusing on her fears, trying to understand and overcome them, that she hadn't considered how her journey could inspire others. She decided that she wanted to continue helping people, especially those who might feel alone, scared, or unsure of themselves. She thought about the young children at the center, the teenagers in her community, and even adults who might be struggling quietly. She wanted to be a source of support, just as Tomas had been for her. Over the next few weeks, Leah began volunteering in new ways. She helped organize small workshops for children, teaching them basic skills and encouraging them to try new things. She led small discussion groups, sharing her own experiences with fear and resilience, and listening carefully to the stories of others. Each interaction reinforced her belief that healing and growth were not solitary journeys. They were shared, built through connection, empathy, and understanding. One afternoon, Leah noticed a young girl at the center who seemed shy and withdrawn. She was sitting alone, watching the other children play but not joining in. Leah approached her gently, kneeling to be at eye level. "Hi," she said softly. "My name is Leah. Would you like to play with us?" The girl hesitated, glancing around nervously. Leah smiled reassuringly. "It's okay to be nervous. We can go slowly. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for." Over the next hour, Leah helped the girl engage in simple activities, always respecting her comfort level and encouraging small steps of participation. By the end of the day, the girl was laughing and smiling, feeling included for the first time. Leah realized that helping others face their fears could be just as powerful as facing her own. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, understanding that healing was not only about personal growth, but also about lifting others along the way. As her confidence grew, Leah began exploring more creative ways to express herself and help others. She started keeping a journal filled with stories, reflections, and small exercises she had learned from Tomas. She wrote about her fears, her victories, and the lessons she had learned. She also created small guides for other young people, teaching simple breathing exercises, journaling techniques, and courage steps. Each time she shared these with someone, she noticed a subtle but meaningful change, not just in them, but in herself. She realized that growth and healing could multiply when shared. Through all these experiences, Tomas remained a quiet guide. He never sought recognition or attention. He simply supported, observed, and offered wisdom when needed. Leah learned to appreciate the balance between guidance and independence, the importance of having someone there to provide gentle support, while also learning to rely on her own strength. Tomas taught her that true leadership and mentoring came from respect, patience, and encouragement, not from control or pressure. As the months passed, Leah noticed something remarkable about herself. She no longer feared moments of uncertainty or challenge. When difficulties arose, she approached them with patience, reflection, and courage. She understood that setbacks were natural, part of the journey, and not signs of weakness. Each obstacle became an opportunity to practice resilience, to test her courage steps, and to grow stronger. Leah's growth didn't go unnoticed by the community. Teachers, parents, and peers began to recognize the calm confidence and leadership she displayed. They saw her willingness to help others, her ability to listen, and her courage in facing challenges openly. Leah felt proud, but she also felt humility. She knew that her journey had been supported by Tomas, by her friends, and by the small steps she had taken daily. It was a shared achievement, a testament to the power of connection and care. One evening, as Leah walked home from the community center, she paused at a quiet park near her house. The sun was setting, casting warm colors across the sky. She thought about how far she had come, from the fear-filled night at the festival, to the trembling steps of courage, to the moments of teaching and guiding others. She realized that healing was no longer just about her own fears. It was about living fully, supporting others, and turning past challenges into lessons that could inspire and empower. Leah smiled softly. She knew that her journey was ongoing, that there would be more challenges ahead, but she felt ready. The fears that had once seemed overwhelming now felt manageable, shaped into lessons of courage, patience, and resilience. She thought about Tomas, about his calm guidance, and about the simple but powerful impact one person could have on another's life. She felt grateful, not only for the help she had received, but also for the opportunity to share that help with others. And in that quiet moment, Leah understood something profound. Life was full of uncertainty, challenges, and moments of fear, but it was also full of opportunities for courage, growth, and connection. She realized that true healing wasn't just about overcoming the past. It was about embracing the present, supporting others, and building a life filled with hope, kindness, and strength. Leah had come a long way since that night at the festival. The memory of her fear, the cry of, "Don't untie my dress," and the quiet presence of Tomas had transformed from a source of panic into a powerful story of courage and growth. She had faced her fears, taken small steps to rebuild her confidence, and found ways to help others along the way. Now she felt ready to take the next step in her journey, sharing her experiences more widely and inspiring those who might feel alone, scared, or uncertain. One morning, Leah received an invitation to speak at a community gathering. The event was organized to encourage young people to share their stories, lessons, and accomplishments. At first, she hesitated. Public speaking had always made her nervous, and the thought of telling her story to a large group of people felt daunting. Yet, she remembered all she had learned from Tomas. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She decided to accept the invitation. On the day of the event, Leah prepared carefully. She dressed in a simple, comfortable outfit that made her feel confident, and she carried her notebook with her, filled with the stories and reflections she had written over the past months. As she stepped onto the stage, she felt a wave of nerves, but she also felt a steady calm. She looked out at the audience, young children, teenagers, parents, and community leaders, and remembered Tomas's words, "Speak from your heart, and people will listen." Leah began slowly, sharing her story of the festival, the fear she had experienced, and the quiet stranger who had helped her. She spoke about the steps she had taken to face her fears, the exercises she had learned, and the small victories she had achieved. As she continued, her voice grew stronger, more confident, and filled with warmth. She spoke about resilience, courage, and the importance of trusting oneself while seeking support from others. The audience listened intently. Children leaned forward, eyes wide with curiosity. Teenagers nodded in recognition, some silently relating to the fear and uncertainty Leah described. Adults watched with admiration, impressed by her honesty and the strength she had shown in facing challenges. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Leah felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that her story could inspire hope, not only in herself but in others as well. After the event, many people approached her to share their thoughts. A young girl whispered, "I used to be afraid to speak in class, but now I think I can try." A teenager thanked her for showing that it was okay to take small steps toward confidence. Parents expressed gratitude for her courage and the positive example she provided for their children. Leah smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart that went beyond anything she had experienced before. She understood that her journey was no longer only about her own healing. It was about empowering others to find their own strength. Leah continued her work at the community center, but now with a new sense of purpose. She started a small program called Steps of Courage, designed to help young people build confidence through storytelling, creative activities, and gentle exercises. The program encouraged participants to share their experiences, support one another, and take small steps toward personal growth. Leah's calm, encouraging presence made participants feel safe and valued. Over time, the program became a source of inspiration for the entire community. One day, as Leah guided a group through a storytelling exercise, she noticed a young boy sitting quietly in the corner. He seemed nervous and hesitant, much like she had felt in the past. Leah knelt beside him and smiled. "Would you like to tell your story?" she asked gently. The boy shook his head slightly. "It's hard," he whispered. "That's okay," Leah replied. "You don't have to tell it all at once. Just start with one small part. I promise we'll listen and support you." Slowly, the boy began to speak, and as he shared his story, Leah realized that she was creating the same safe space that Tomas had provided for her. She understood that true guidance came from patience, empathy, and trust, not from rushing or forcing anyone to act before they were ready. As the weeks passed, Leah watched the participants in her program grow. She saw children learning to speak up, teenagers finding their voices, and even adults discovering new confidence. Each success, no matter how small, reminded her of her own journey and the steps she had taken to reclaim her life from fear. She felt a profound sense of joy and fulfillment, knowing that her experiences could help others find their own courage. Leah also continued to work closely with Tomas, learning more about his culture and traditions. He shared stories about resilience, community, and the importance of preserving knowledge and values through teaching. Leah found that these lessons were not only inspiring, but also practical, offering guidance on how to lead, mentor, and create meaningful connections. Through Tomas, she learned that wisdom could be quiet, gentle, and yet powerful enough to change lives. One evening, Leah and Tomas sat together in the garden behind the community center. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Leah reflected on how far she had come, from the terrified girl at the festival to the confident, compassionate young woman she had become. "I never imagined I could come this far," she said softly. "Sometimes I still remember that night, and I'm amazed that I made it through." "You didn't just make it through, Leah. You learned, you grew, and now you help others do the same. That is true strength. Remember, courage is not something you find once. It is something you practice every day." Leah nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. She understood that her journey of healing and growth was ongoing, but she no longer feared the future. She knew that challenges would arise, but she also knew that she had the tools, the support, and the inner strength to face them. More importantly, she had learned that sharing her journey could empower others, creating a cycle of courage, trust, and healing. As the months turned into years, Leah's influence continued to grow. She became a mentor not only at the community center but also in her school and neighborhood. She spoke at events, guided small programs, and offered support to anyone in need. Her story of fear transformed into a story of empowerment, resilience, and hope. A story that reminded everyone that even the most frightening moments could lead to growth and strength. Leah often thought back to that night at the festival, the memory of fear, the cry of, "Don't untie my dress," and the quiet presence of a stranger who had helped her seemed almost like a distant dream. Yet she knew that it had been real, and that it had changed the course of her life. Without that moment, she might not have discovered her courage, her resilience, or her passion for helping others. She also thought about Tomas, who had quietly guided her every step of the way. She realized that not every mentor needed to be loud or demanding. Sometimes the most powerful influence came from someone who listened, understood, and offered gentle support. Thomas had shown her that courage was patient, kindness was powerful, and healing could be shared to help others grow. In the end, Leah's journey was not only about overcoming fear, but about transforming it into something meaningful. She had learned that moments of fear could be turned into lessons of courage, that small steps could lead to great achievements, and that sharing one's journey could inspire others to find their own strength. She had learned that healing was not a destination, but a lifelong practice of patience, empathy, and growth. And so, Leah continued forward, confident and compassionate, using her experiences to guide others, support those in need, and share a message of hope. The story that had begun with fear had become a story of empowerment, a story that reminded everyone, young and old, that courage, resilience, and kindness could transform lives.